Gettysburg was a terrible blow to the Confederacy. As long as 2 weeks after the battle, some newspapers were still proclaiming a victory in the South. Yet, in time, the reality set in, and people realized that Lee had gone there and had tried to fight a major battle and had lost that major battle. This combined with the fall of Vicksburg, which occurred on July 4th, 1863, really sent the Confederacy reeling. In 2 days, the Confederacy had lost 50,000 men and perhaps 85,000 stand of arms. The wonder is that the Confederacy could even operate in August of 1863. A Charleston newspaper, the Mercury, even accused Lee of being an incompetent general for fighting at Gettysburg and for conducting that campaign, which the newspaper editor termed imbecilic, I think was his word.
Five years after the war, John Mosby, who was a Confederate cavalry commander, very successful cavalry commander, tells of running into George Pickett in Richmond. Mosby had just seen General Lee, Robert E. Lee, in a hotel, had a short meeting with him, and he tells Pickett this, for lack of anything else to say. And Pickett immediately seems interested in wanting to see Lee, and he says to Mosby, "Will you come with me to see the general?" And Mosby's surprised at this request because he knows that Pickett had been one of Lee's generals, and he doesn't understand why there would be any need for an introduction, but he agrees. And according to Mosby, the interview that follows was cold and formal, and there's a lot of silence in the room, and Mosby felt extremely uncomfortable, and it lasts just a few moments. And as they're walking out of the hotel, Pickett, kind of under his breath, says, "That old man destroyed my division." And Mosby turns to him and said, "Well, it made you immortal."
Gettysburg was an enormous defeat. It affected the morale of Southerners, no matter where they were, and it certainly affected the morale in Lee's army. So much so that in the wake of Gettysburg in mid-August, Lee actually offered to resign, submitted his resignation to Jefferson Davis. The criticism that he had heard indirectly, but that no one had presented to him directly, criticism of his handling of the battle, his generalship, of the way the Army had been led. One of Lee's staff officers points out that there were 9 brigades involved in this attack, while 22 more brigades stood around and watched. What, he suggested, would have happened had Lee involved, or somebody involved, more than 9 brigades in the assault, and made it more massive than it was, risked even more. And this certainly would be consistent with Lee's strategic thinking, that is, to risk all when the goal is potential victory. What if the Confederates had risked more? Well, I, for one, think, and think is all I can say, I don't know, think that Pickett's charge had a chance of succeeding. After all, they did take that first Union line across that stone wall at the Bloody Angle. What if more brigades of fresh troops had stormed in after them and held that gap open? Then Meade's army would have been split in half, and Lee could possibly, potentially, have destroyed Meade's fractions with his own mass, his whole army, against fractions of Meade's. It failed, but of course it was Lee's fault. I think it's consistent with Lee's vision of victory and the tactical control of the battle and the way it happened seems to suggest that Lee had a better plan than what happened, and that perhaps Lee lost the battle for precisely the reason that he won lots of other battles, because he was willing to risk and because he gave his subordinates the authority and gave them the freedom to do what they thought best in the circumstances, to come up fast and start fighting, which was, of course, Lee's inclination. Jackson did it, and Jackson was as close as predictable to coming up fast and fighting as Jackson could be predictable.